Good morning. So, I wanted to do another video after last night. Um, Pretty sure that there's there's a lot of people in the world that are sharing a similar mental health situation, especially if you're paying attention and you know the facts historically around U.S. aggression around the world. Ironically enough, starting on what was once named Turtle Island, which is now the United States of America. From the East Coast to the West Coast, complete genocide of 93% of the indigenous, and South America as well, when it comes to what the Spanish did with the Aztecs and the Incas and the Mayans. I know that there's a lot of people most likely feeling quite powerless, and I encourage you to express yourself, family, friends, strangers. Within reason, of course. Don't get yourself hurt. Pushback has degrees based on where you're at in the world, what you can do, how you can facilitate your angst, and put it to use in large and small ways. The reason I want to do this discussion this morning is just to put into perspective a few things that I've learned through my journey since October 7th. And that is that the collective patriarchal psychosis that has been going on for thousands of years, curiously enough, what was, I feel, originally developed to counteract psychopathy and sociopathic tendencies, is now at the forefront of justifying genocide, preemptive invasions, and evasions. Ultimately, religion itself, but not so much individual, the individual's relationship to it, or the singular sort of personal relationship to it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about religion as a propaganda machine, and it has two faces, maybe three, but ultimately in the world we live in day to day, it has two: your personal relationship to it and what it becomes when there's a conflict, or it needs a conflict in order to boost its ratings or justify or deny or obfuscate or deflect from a larger issue. When religion is being used by its opposite, basically, which seemingly the religious leaders have no real moral standing or defense against it. They collaborate and heighten things, get people's emotions stirred, and superstitions reinforce those suspicions that are connected to their fear and their creative imagination. And all this is based on what governments thrive on, and that is an uneducated public. I mean, fundamentally, the West is an anti-intellectual regime, and so is Israel. There's a lot of propaganda that relies on a kind of isolationist lifestyle of hyper materialism and higher education is designed to be ultimately out of reach for what the Republicans and Democrats and liberals know to be, quote, the common folk. And it's designed that way, ultimately. It's there are exceptions, scholarships, things like this, but exceptions don't amount statistically to a change. And so the internet comes along, and I see it as a counterbalance agent. Of course, it has a shadow side as well, as all inventions that come along in the human sphere do. But you have the opportunity to be your own educator. And if you don't know how to do that, you can, ironically enough, Google it, how to educate myself on world issues or how to fact check. Don't use AI to fact check. I'd suggest, if you're motivated, depending on the subject, read documentation, official documentation by non-biased representatives in the world. You know, the UN records are a good place to start. Definitely not the U.S. State Department. And remember that there are things redacted from official documents. So if you read a historical fact and then you go to an account of that historical fact in an archive and you read it, and that section is missing, understand that it's important to have 3, 4, 5, 6 versions of the story, minimally 3. I tend to over-engineer when I try to anchor into facts that I'm wanting to validate or understand better. And So ultimately, how can you use the tragedies and the injustice to refine your relationship to the world? Because living in America as the police state it is, and ultimately being under the auspices of the Epstein class, fascism is a dangerous system, and physically, and this is going on statistical probability and historical accounts. John F. Kennedy is a fine example, and he was the president of the United States. He tried to change, and well, he tried to change some things, particularly associated with Israel, and look where that got him. There's a huge capitalist military industrial complex based on like an ancestral pathology of greed, indifference, reactionary wars, and a kind of lust to destroy, ultimately destroy and take. It's maybe for another time to discuss, but the main point I wanted to share this morning is just like a kind of a mental health exercise in speaking, recording it, putting it out there, rather than letting it run around inside me. After almost 2 years of in-depth investigative journalist, a kind of political forensics 101. I'm no scholar of foreign affairs or political science. My background is in fine art, and I'm a writer as well, and not political discourse, but originally short stories, prose, poetry, things like this, and I got into writing political analysis after October 7th, and educating the small group of friends that I have on Facebook ultimately. And then I got shadow banned on Facebook, and I had a friend who knew one of Facebook's lawyers by chance, interestingly enough, and I private messaged him, and ultimately kind of let him know that I knew who he was, and from the periphery asked him if he could look into it, and my account was unfrozen within 24 hours, coincidentally enough. And yet I still feel that Facebook is shadow banning me, which is another example of going back to the Kennedy thing, and saying that we live under an umbrella that produces storm clouds that produce rain, The umbrella is not to protect you from the rain, it's to create rain. And I think the best that you can do is empathize, understand, build some dignity. Um, that will protect your mental health condition. Um, it can get isolating at times and a little spooky, because you get into like a roundabout, and solitude can turn into a kind of unintentionally self-imposed festering of sorts if you don't have an outlet, some place to share it. I mean, even writing it down helps, moving it from the inside to the outside. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm doing an exercise with YouTube to share my thoughts and what I know and maintain mental health. Um, it's hard to be a citizen in what you know to be a complete scam. I mean, if you peel away the coping mechanisms that have been in place in America almost since the get-go, you know, the old school Sears catalog that's like 3 inches thick. Um, Instead of one hammer, you have 5. They all look the same, but made by 5 different blacksmiths with a different stamp, as if one is going to hit the nail different than the other. There's things that convince people that choice is freedom, and it's often simply preoccupation with having too much of a good thing, a kind of hyper pride in a way. There's no filter, there's no humility, and just to put the brakes on it and say, well, maybe we can do something better with this money than put it into R&D to tweak a little bit a product that's been around for 500 years, brand it our way. You know, it's privilege. Basically, it's a hobby of privilege to reinvent the wheel and call it a rehabilitated square. You know, it's rather than a circle, it's a rehabilitated square. So just beware of apathy and complacency and fear. It's the loss that you feel is legitimate, but it's also important in feeling this loss of sometimes one's own mental health through watching a televised genocide for going on 3 years now, um, and the world just standing back and ultimately letting Israel do what Israel has been doing since 1948. Um, there could be intervention, but there isn't. It's the West has vetoed every UN resolution to put Israel to inspection as far as human rights violations, false imprisonment of Palestinians, human abuse, uh, torture reports, proof. Uh, the U.S. are in lockstep with Israel from the early days. The United States was the first to announce to the world officially that Israel was a nation state, its own country, so to speak. But for me, in the early days of me pushing back on mainstream media propaganda around Israel, I had a few people react and blame me for some sort of anti-Semitism, which was completely, well, it just showed me that the 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 defensive mechanisms that people have to not think and just completely dismiss and be in denial are firmly in place. And that's the first thing they do is, oh, well, you're anti-Semite. Well, okay, um, let's just imagine that that was true. Does that mean that what I'm talking about is not true? That Israel is not committing a genocide? Or is being an anti-Semite or not an anti-Semite more important than resisting and speaking out against a genocide? So what exactly is your point? Like, um, would you rather uh, talk about the importance of ideologically, intellectually, emotionally? Would you rather have that as your value system, whether you're anti-Semite or not? Is that a value system above mass human slaughter of innocents? Like, what are we talking about here? Um, what are your real concerns? Why are you deflecting away from uh, the obvious, more important subject that I'm talking about? People bring in, oh well, do you condemn Hamas? That's often the lamp lighting thing that mainstream media was doing to people who are resisting the genocide. The first question would be, well, do you condemn Hamas? Well, how is condemnation of Hamas, how is that anything about what's actually happening? Or is it the mainstream media wants the viewer of you being interviewed to dismiss anything that you have to say if you don't say that? So it's like a kind of a brick wall that they build in front of the truth, not to have the truth hit it, but to hide it. So it's a tactic, and the best thing to do is, at least in this day and age, redirect and stay on point. Don't give those questions any attention, at least in the beginning. You can maybe dive back in the middle or towards the end, but in the beginning, stay firm to what you're focusing on, and don't be distracted by a redirect. Basically, it's a redirect. And I think a lot about what we don't know about October 7th. What we do know, I'm not going to talk about everything that we know, but one thing is that Israel knew that Hamas was planning something for a long time. Israel is the most heavily surveilled region in the world, hands down. Illegal surveillance of civilians. There are cameras everywhere in Gaza and the West Bank, and drones 24/7, robotical machine gun robots running around the perimeter of Gaza, spy satellites, British reconnaissance planes. They know what's happening minute by minute, second by second. AI voice recognition, facial recognition, you name it. It's being experimented with, refined, applied to the Palestinians for decades. And then once they perfect this technology, they sell it to other regimes to do similar surveillance of their civilian population. So Israel knew, and in my opinion, let it happen. I'll be careful not to speculate, but I feel that's on the borderlines of speculation. It's like it's just waiting for the facts to come out. It's something that it makes all the sense if you look at the series of events and how things, if you map it out, and so it's just right on the edge of not speculating and in feeling that it's impossible that they did not know that this was being planned and that it would happen. And that when there was the prison break, it wasn't a prison break of convicts and homicidal convicted felons. It was a prison break of civilians, ultimately, and Hamas mixed in with civilians. And the IDF also mowed down Israelis. That's been documented. The damage to the cars from the outdoor concert that was happening. There's absolutely no way that that damage can be achieved by anything that Hamas was carrying. It was from helicopter gunships and tanks. And so do your research. Look up the Hannibal Directive. Also the Samson option, and understand that this situation is coming from a pathological evolution of the, well, fascism itself, but also a version of fascism that has hijacked Judaism and called it Zionism. And Zionism is not Judaism, and yet it's just like evangelical Christians, in my eyes, are not Christians. They are, um, in a word, extremists. I mean, at least in the sense of being extremely not Christian in praying over George Bush's illegal war missiles, supporting Israel. They have no moral foundation that keeps them in check, that they've committed to, and ultimately, if you're not willing to commit to something that puts a check in your ego, then you're a soft radical just waiting to be drafted by the U.S. State Department and Defense Department to prove how radical you can be, and whether you can put the pedal to the metal and risk your life in doing something that has no foundation in the refining your humanity, let's say. It's not to say that the Bible and the Torah and the Quran don't contain propaganda. They do. I mean, we're all human beings, and there's parts of our psyche, our psychology, that do not evolve unless we do something to evolve it. So ignorance and racism, these things, propaganda, superstition, these things are passed down generation after generation after generation. And maybe some people can resist these indoctrinations as children or young teenagers because they have earned that predisposition to having a bullshit meter, basically, and feeling that, no, that's not for me. It's very mysterious because my father was very racist, and as a child, that was repugnant to me from the get-go. Like, even when I was like 3 feet tall, whenever that kind of energy or attitude was sort of entered the room, words were spoken, judgments were made, assumptions. I knew right away that there wasn't anything wrong with people outside my home. There was something wrong with my home. So do yourself a favor. If you believe in evolution carrying on after your mortal coil has expired, educate yourself. build convictions, have a moral foundation. Do not compromise in the early beginnings. You can choose your battles, but first you have to make a weapon. You can't choose your battles if you can't step up to the plate with something to actually battle. So do not compromise. It's there won't be any foundation until you have uncompromising principles, ethics, morals, standards, and be that example. Don't be a bigot or a hypocrite. That's no good. Of course, it's going to happen because there's contradictions that will come up, but just use that as an alarm clock to remind yourself that there's something in there that needs help, and help it, and don't let your failures at building a moral foundation, don't let that turn into impatience and self-judgment. That's just the ego resisting rehabilitation. It's going to be frustrating. It's going to be painful to filter out your superstitions through education and study, scholarship, being a existential scholar of your own mind and your emotional maturity and autonomy as a person who not only reacts but actually listens to what's being said and has a kind of an earned filter to hear that, listen to that, and respond not flippantly, but with thoughtfulness and care for yourself. To me, the original angels are ethics, principles, morals. They're not patriarchal winged beings guarding a gate. It's ironic that heaven and hell supposedly have gates. I mean, what's that all about? Who needs a gate? It's quite telling that a lot of what you read, symbolism, is simply an externalization of the world that we have built and live in and continue to live in as tides rise and fall and time marches on. So I'm going to get ready for work, and thank you for listening. Blessings to Gaza's dead, the unburied. Also, the spirits that the IDF hold captive, the unmarked graves and bodies in cold storage that they keep from families as collective punishment. Let that sink in, that the psychosis, that fascism, the depth of its depravity is well, it's not endless, of course, because we have an atmosphere and we're on a planet suspended in a void. So there is a limitation as to how far it can go. But keeping prison dead bodies, that's pretty much, I feel, as far as you can go on Earth. With like the material that you've been given to abuse and recklessly handle, contradictory to, of course, the very religion that you say you practice. There's failures on all fronts across the board for anyone who claims religion as their justification for anti-religious behavior. Again, cognitive dissonance. It's a mental health situation, and be an example of how that mental health can be cured. That's what I'm encouraging people to do: is be sad, be depressed, be anxious, but also engage with that. Read, understand, share your thoughts, share your feelings, engage with it. Don't let it just simply sit in all four corners of a room and stare at you. It's these are extremely powerful, primordial instincts and forces inside the human being. And if you're not if you're not in charge of seeing to them, they will slowly whittle you back down to basically the elemental chart, and it's an opportunity. Ultimately, it's like fire coming to your home and asking for a candle. It's important to give fire what it wants, especially if it itself is asking you for a candle. You really want to find a candle, because the other side of that coin is that it will get what it needs one way or the other. And you don't want to be the candle in rejecting your own desires and your own curiosity and your own sense of injustice. In that rejection, you're denying yourself, and that denial is self-destructive. It will. There's like a reciprocal justice around that, where if you have this sense of injustice and you don't do anything with it, it turns into being unjust towards yourself. So don't do that if you can help it. Or experiment, do it, and then see how it feels. You know, it's an experiment. Good luck.